Planeswalkers are some of the strongest and most iconic cards in Magic. They command armies, bend time, destroy worlds, and sometimes turn gods into elks. But which ones truly stand above the rest? Let's find out. Have you ever activated your Planeswalker on your opponent's turn? Kicking off the list at number 10 is Teferi, Master of Time. Let's check it out. Teferi is 2 generic and 2 blue. He enters with 3 loyalty. His static ability reads, you may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi on any player's turn anytime you could cast an instant. +1, draw a card, then discard a card. -3, target creature you don't control phases out. Treat it and anything attached to it as though they don't exist until its controller's next turn. -10, take 2 extra turns after this one. He might start small at just 3 loyalty, but since you can activate his loyalty abilities on your opponent's turn, he ticks up fast, especially in a 4-player commander game. Teferi shines in decks that can quickly ramp up his loyalty to the -10 ultimate. Atraxa, Praetor's Voice, is a great commander for this strategy, and it's an incredibly fun build for Planeswalker Tribal. First, let's read Atraxa. She's a green, white, blue, and a black for a 4/4 with flying, vigilance, death touch, and lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, proliferate. Choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of each kind already there. Proliferate is a great way to increase a Planeswalker's loyalty. Evolution Sage lets you proliferate every time a land enters under your control. Flux Channeler whenever you cast a non-creature spell, and Metastatic Evangel whenever another non-token creature you control enters. Wait for your opponents to cast a few spells and surprise everyone at the table with Radstorm. There are also a few counter doublers. Doubling Season is incredibly powerful, doubling the amount of loyalty counters a Planeswalker will enter with. Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider, does the same thing, but it's on a big hasty body. Fun fact, when Teferi was first printed in Core Set 2021, there were 18 different printings. Yes, just in that set. This was the first release of this card, and Wizards went all out. There were 4 regular frame variants, 4 showcase frame variants, and 1 borderless frame. All of these can also come in foil as well, which is how we get to the number 18. There's no other Planeswalker that plays like Teferi does. He's unique, fun, and more threatening than he initially appears. We have a new Planeswalker from Tarkir Dragonstorm, Ugin, Eye of Storms. Few cards say game over like this one does. Let's check it out. Ugin is 7 generic mana and enters with 7 loyalty. When you cast this spell, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. +2, you gain 3 life and draw a card. 0, add 3 colorless mana. -11, search your library for any number of colorless non-land cards, exile them, then shuffle. Until end of turn, you may cast those cards without paying their mana costs. Man, that's a lot of power for 7 mana. I love that you get the exile ability when you cast him. That ensures you get some value even if he gets countered. When he successfully hits the battlefield, however, he can quickly take over a game. If the board is under control, just keep using the +2 to draw cards and gain life. When it's not, play as many colorless spells as possible. Imagine using his 0 ability to add 3 colorless mana, then casting a few more colorless spells, like a 3 mana rock into Sol Ring. If you ever get to use his ultimate, it will be very difficult for you to lose that game. There are lots of commander decks Ugin can be played in. My personal favorite is in an Eldrazi deck that's full of devoid creatures. Devoid, of course, means the card has no color, which makes it easier to trigger Ugin over and over. Our next Planeswalker isn't a mythic rare or even a regular rare. It's an uncommon with a single ability. But don't let that fool you. Narset, Parter of Veils, may look subtle, but she's a brutal prison piece in disguise. Narset is 1 generic and 2 blue. She enters with 5 loyalty. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. -2. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest at the bottom of your library in a random order. Narset is a card you either love or hate. That likely depends on whether you see this as a card you'd want to play yourself or one you'd expect to face across the table. Her static ability alone shuts down entire strategies, turning off card draw engines, wheel effects, and most of what blue decks rely on to stay ahead. And if you're the one playing her, that -2 lets you dig for answers, control pieces, or combo parts with surprising efficiency. What really pushes her over the top is how easily she turns fair cards into oppressive tools. Pair her with a wheel effect, and suddenly you're refilling your hand while your opponents are left with just one card. A classic example is Windfall. Another is the infamous Wheel of Fortune. Even something like Days Undoing can become a one-sided hand wipe. In Commander, that kind of asymmetry draws hate fast, but it also wins games. For an uncommon planeswalker that's just one ability, Narset delivers far more than her rarity suggests, and leaves a lasting impact every time she hits the board. You knew he'd be here. Arguably the most iconic planeswalker ever printed. Jace the Mind Sculptor is the original powerhouse planeswalker. 4 abilities and only 4 mana. Let's read what he does. Jace is 2 generic and 2 blue. He enters with 3 loyalty. +2. Look at the top card of target player's library. You may put that card on the bottom of that player's library. 0. Draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. -1. Return target creature to its owner's hand. -12. Exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles their hand into their library. Jace offers flexibility, card advantage, and board control all in one. Don't overlook miracle cards like Temporal Mastery when you're deck building with Jace. His 0 ability is a brainstorm every turn, letting you set up the top of your library. Also, play some extra fetch lands, which have always been incredibly powerful with brainstorm effects. Just put the cards you don't want on top of your deck and then shuffle them away. His -1 keeps the board clear. His +2 makes sure your opponents never sees the cards that they actually want to draw. When he was first printed in Worldwake back in 2010, Jace quickly dominated Standard to the point of being banned, a first for any planeswalker. He became a defining card in Modern and Legacy, earned a reputation as Jace the Wallet Sculptor, and even had players calling for power level reforms in planeswalker design. After all these years, Jace the Mind Sculptor is still a blueprint for what a top-tier planeswalker looks like. This is where things get weird, and I love it. Grist, the Hunger Tide, is up next. She enters with 3 loyalty. As long as Grist isn't on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types. +1, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token, then mill a card. If an insect card was milled this way, put a loyalty counter on Grist and repeat this process. -2, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, destroy target creature or planeswalker. -5, each opponent loses life equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. First, we have to talk about her static. Grist is a planeswalker that counts as a creature as long as it's not on the battlefield. Why is this important? So many reasons. She counts as 2 card types for Tarmogoyf or for Delirium purposes. She's uncounterable with Cavern of Souls on Insect. She can be your commander since she's technically a legendary creature, although you cannot counter her with Spell Pierce. Essence Scatter does work, however. You can find her with Worldly Tutor, or better yet, put her straight into play with Green Sun Zenith. Or one of my favorite cards, Natural Order. She can also be reanimated from the graveyard. Living Death works, and Grist is a match made in hell for Recurring Nightmare. Just avoid Animate Dead. It would bring Grist back to the battlefield, but then Grist stops being a creature. Animate Dead fizzles because Grist is not a valid target, meaning Grist is sacrificed as a result. Here's a fun fact. If you ultimate Grist at 5 loyalty, she will be a creature card in your graveyard and count herself when determining how much life each opponent loses. I could probably keep going, but I'm confident that this was enough to get you excited about this planeswalker. Look, if you don't love a legendary planeswalker that comes with a space hamster, I don't know what to tell you. Minsk and Boo are 2 generic, 1 red, and 1 green. They enter with 3 loyalty. When Minsk and Boo enters, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may create Boo, a legendary 1/1 red hamster creature token with trample and haste. +1, put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature with trample or haste. -2, sacrifice a creature. When you do, Minsk and Boo deals X damage to any target where X is that creature's power. If the sacrifice creature was a hamster, draw X cards. Minsk and Blue Timeless Heroes can be your commander. Let's recap. For 4 mana and using the +1 ability, you get a 4/4 with trample and haste, and you're left with a planeswalker at 4 loyalty. That is a lot of power for 4 mana. If Minsk and Boo isn't immediately dealt with, next turn you can use the -2 to throw Boo for 4 damage and 4 cards. Few cards in Magic's history can put on the pressure this fast. I love that Minsk and Boo can be your commander as well. I actually have a +1/+1 counter themed commander deck with this dynamic duo at the helm. Now, they are more than just power. There are some great synergy pieces as well. One of my favorites is Hero's Blade, which will automatically attach to Boo every time he enters. Mirror Box allows you to create an army of space hamsters, and putting a bunch of counters on Boo and throwing him with the -2 can wildly swing games in your favor. Here comes the only 2-mana planeswalker on this list. Wrenn 6 just does so much for 2 mana, and the opportunity cost is low. Let's check it out. Wrenn 6 is 1 red, 1 green, and enters with 3 loyalty. +1, return up to 1 target land from your graveyard to your hand. -1, Wrenn 6 deals 1 damage to any target. -7, you get an emblem with instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard have retrace. You may cast instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard by discarding a land. Honestly, at first read, this doesn't seem super powerful. If I play Wrenn 6 on turn 2, what are the chances I'll have a land in my graveyard? What is dealing 1 damage even going to accomplish? The -7 seems powerful, but it takes so long to get there. You should really try playing the card if you can, because I didn't understand until I did. Using the +1 on a fetch land is essentially drawing a card, and most decks in most formats play fetch lands. For those of you who play Legacy, you already know how broken this is with Wasteland, which is why it was quickly banned in Legacy. To my knowledge, this is the only example of a card being banned in Legacy, but legal in Modern. Okay, so the +1 is a powerful draw engine. What about dealing 1 measly damage with the -1? Does that matter at all? Maybe not so much in Commander, but let's take a look at what creatures this can kill in Modern. Snapcaster Mage, Dark Confidant, Flickerwisp, Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, Dragon's Rage Channeler, Orcish Bowmasters, Ocelot Pride, Dryad Arbor, Brazen Borrower, Blood Artist, Noble Hierarch, Ignoble Hierarch, and many other mana dorks, and I'm sure there's plenty more examples I'm not thinking of. Here's the deal. Wrenn 6 demands an answer. At just 2 mana, it's a threat that dodges most traditional removal. Back before Modern Horizons 2 brought us tools like Unholy Heat and Prismatic Ending, the era of Fatal Push left Wrenn 6 feeling almost untouchable on an open board. Even now, it's absurdly efficient. It fixes your mana, gives you card advantage with a fetch land every turn, and picks off X1 creatures repeatedly, freeing up your other removal spells for bigger threats. And if you let it get to an emblem in a deck that's running Lightning Bolt, even control players have to sweat, because that ultimate can close out games fast. The most chaotic good planeswalker in Magic, Comet Stellar Pup, has just a single ability and no static. What ability could be powerful enough to make the top 3 of this list? Let's check it out. Comet Stellar Pup is 2 generic, 1 red, 1 white, and enters with 5 loyalty. 0. Roll a 6-sided die. 1 or 2, you add 2 loyalty, then create 2 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. They gain haste until end of turn. On a 3, -1 loyalty, then return a card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. On 4 or 5, Comet deals damage equal to the number of loyalty counters on him to a creature or a player. Then -2. 6, +1 loyalty, and you may activate Comet's loyalty ability 2 more times this turn. Comet Stellar Pup is a card that hides just how absurdly strong it really is. At 4 mana with 5 loyalty, it lands in that sweet spot. Easy to cast, but a nightmare to remove. From there, it does everything. It makes blockers, it doubles as removal, and it can even recur cards from your graveyard. On the low end, it's basically a 4 mana Eternal Witness. You roll a few 6s, and Comet can absolutely storm off by itself, generating an avalanche of value before your opponent even knows what hit them. Interestingly, almost nobody realized this at release. Comet debuted in Unfinity, and as much as it hurts to say it, unsets just aren't that popular. Worse still, Unfinity dropped in 2022, right in the middle of one of the most stacked Magic years for sets that we have seen. So when people saw Comet for the first time, the reaction wasn't, wow, that's busted. It was, ha, a dog planeswalker that rolls dice, while secretly being one of the strongest and most chaotic value engines in the game. Our number 2 planeswalker is as divisive as they come. Half of Magic players consider it one of the most powerful cards ever printed. The other half call it the worst designed and most infuriating card in the game's history. Love him or hate him, there's no denying that Teferi, Time Raveler, left a massive mark on Magic. So, what exactly makes him so impactful? Let's break it down. Teferi is 1 generic, 1 white, 1 blue, and enters with 4 loyalty. Each opponent can cast spells only any time they could cast a sorcery. +1, until your next turn, you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. -3, return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand. Draw a card. For Teferi fans, the floor is already impressive. 3 mana to bounce a permanent and draw a card is perfectly fine. but the ceiling, in the right matchup, Teferi Time Raveler can straight up win the game. Against control decks, his static ability completely shuts down counterspells. Against creature decks, ticking him up and dropping an uncounterable Wrath at instant speed feels downright unfair. For the haters, Teferi represents the kind of gameplay they despise, removing interaction entirely. Many would rather face a Blood Moon or even Chalice of the Void than deal with Teferi locking them out of responses. In summary, Teferi does it all. He blanks opposing counterspells, forces your opponents to play cards like Orcish Bowmaster's Lightning Bolt and Brainstorm at sorcery speed, removes most non-land permanents, and even replaces himself by drawing a card. He's flexible, oppressive, and occasionally downright cruel. The +1 ability might be underused, but if you've ever cast a Thoughtseize during your opponent's draw step, knowing they can't respond, you know how satisfying that feels. And don't forget, he also stops Cascade, Suspend, and even Amped Raptor. Before we reveal the top Planeswalker, let's talk about a few that almost made the cut. Elspeth Stormslayer. Elspeth has always delivered. From creating armies of tokens to unleashing game-changing ultimates, she's a cornerstone of white mid-range strategies for over a decade. This latest incarnation feels like a greatest hits package. She can protect herself by making blockers, sweep away threats when the board gets out of hand, and pump your entire team with a +1/+1 counter and flying to boot. She's versatile, resilient, and always brings that classic Elspeth heroic commander on the battlefield vibe. Out of all her versions, this one might just be my favorite. Few Planeswalkers have a legacy as enduring or as feared as Liliana of the Veil. Since her debut in Innistrad, she's been a symbol of inevitability, the face of black midrange, and one of the most recognizable characters in the game's lore. Mechanically, she's a masterclass in efficiency. 3 mana for a Planeswalker that shreds hands, forces sacrifice, and fuels graveyard strategies all at once. In Modern, she defined entire archetypes for over a decade, becoming the go-to answer for control and mid-range players alike. Today, she is outclassed by the newer and more powerful Planeswalkers, but she will always be one of the most iconic Planeswalkers of all time. The greatest thief in the multiverse, and he's not subtle about it. Dak Fayden is a powerhouse in formats like Vintage Cube, where Loot 2 every turn lets you dig for your best cards at lightning speed while fielding your graveyard synergies. And his minus ability, stealing artifacts is almost always devastating, especially in environments filled with mana rocks, swords, or broken combo pieces. He's disruptive, he's resource positive, and he's endlessly fun to play, as long as you're the one doing the stealing. We've made it to the #1 spot, the most powerful Planeswalker ever printed. So powerful, in fact, he's banned in more formats than he's legal in. Let's check out Oko, Thief of Crowns. Oko is 1 generic, 1 green, 1 blue, and he enters with 4 loyalty. +2, create a food token. +1, target artifact or creature loses all abilities and becomes a green elk creature with base power and toughness 3/3. -5, exchange control of target artifact or creature you control and target creature and opponent controls with power 3 or less. Oko isn't just the most powerful Planeswalker ever printed, he's one of the most quietly oppressive cards in Magic's history. At first glance, people underestimated him. 3 mana, make some food, maybe turn something into a 3/3, okay, neat. But once he hits the tables, it becomes painfully clear. Oko doesn't just have 3 abilities. He's a toolbox of answers disguised as 3 lines of text. His +2 doesn't just make a food token. It's a built-in life gain engine against aggro and a free artifact for any deck that cares about them. Then there's the +1, the real nightmare. It doesn't care whose permanent it targets, and it doesn't care if they're creatures or artifacts. That flexibility means that it can turn your late-game mana dorks into 3/3 beaters, shrink a giant threat into a harmless elk, strip all abilities from problem creatures, removing keywords, triggers, and static effects. Convert your own expendable artifacts, like the food tokens he makes, into attackers. Shut down enemy artifacts entirely. From Batterskull to the Great Henge to Chalice of the Void. Every one of those is relevant in real games, and all of them add loyalty. Normally, Planeswalkers have to spend loyalty to deal with the board. Oko just keeps climbing higher, getting harder to kill while dismantling your opponent's strategies. The truth is, Oko's raw power doesn't come from one broken number or one oppressive ability. It's the fact that every ability is live in almost every matchup. He's removal, he's life gain, he's threat creation, he's disruption, all just for 3 mana. That flexibility made him the most format warping Planeswalker we've ever seen, earning his place as our #1 spot. Before we wrap up, I want to show you the coolest thing I have ever seen happen with Oko Thief of Crowns. In fact, This is probably my favorite play I've ever seen in Magic history. It's the kind of play you couldn't script if you tried. This happened in Vintage, in a high-stakes tournament with one of the rarest, most valuable cards in Magic's history is sitting on the battlefield, an Alpha Black Lotus. And then Oko does something so perfect that the only thing left to do is laugh, cheer, and never forget it. Check out this clip.
That one's big. That one gets to be special. Revoker chump blocks. Jody just trying to buy himself time to draw lands, but not looking good.
No, I mean, Jody Keith here feels dead to rights. No pun intended. I did not see that Deathrite Shaman on the stack.
Wow.
Patch
Joe Brennan, ladies and gentlemen.
Joe Brennan.
In case you missed it, Oko turned the Alpha Black Lotus into an elk and then swung it in for lethal. Yes, this player just won by attacking with a Black Lotus. It doesn't get any cooler than that. There you have it, my top 10 Planeswalkers of all time. From broken control pieces to adorable chaos pups, these walkers represent everything I love about Magic. What's your personal favorite Planeswalker? Drop it in the comments. If you enjoyed this list, give it a like, hit subscribe for more Magic content, and don't forget, sometimes turning a god into an elk is the best play you'll ever make. See you next time, Planeswalkers.